What's up, everybody? Pickswise Nation, thanks for hanging out with us here on this very exciting Pickswise Mega Sweet 16 preview, Mega March Madness preview for the Sweet 16. However you want to slice it, we're back for another week, and I've got my two studs ready to dish out, hopefully, some more winners. Dan Servodidio, Fantasy Alarm analyst, and of course, Jim Root, host of the Three Man Week podcast, regulars here on the Pickswise platform. So we're hanging out for another week, and we're trying to get through what has been so far. I don't necessarily want to say unpredictable because the favorites, for the most part, have done pretty well. Underdogs have covered more against the number. But Dan, I'll let you go first. Your thoughts from this past week of madness.
Well, yeah, the underdogs. I feel like we should have just picked underdogs against the spread every single game because it seems like they've been covered a ton. But yeah, I think my national champion was Kentucky, so they were out, on the first day of the tournament. So it's been nice not being tied down to a team in the bracket and just kind of looking at each game individually now going forward and just kind of removing myself from that. But yeah, Kentucky losing was a killer for my bracket, but it's been a great tournament. I mean, some definitely surprising upsets, and we still got a lot of really good teams left in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, the Thursday night slate of the Sweet 16 is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's the game after game is going to be fantastic. Going to need two screens for sure. The one takeaway that I have already set a reminder for myself for March 15th, 2023 is don't fall in love with these cute offense heavy underdogs. Those are the ones that I think I really talked myself into this year. The Colgates, the South Dakota States, Vermont, the teams that can shoot the three, I thought that would be the great equalizer in this tournament. And really, it was the teams that play more physical, the better defensive underdogs. New Mexico State, St. Peter's, Akron very nearly beat UCLA. Those were the teams that performed better, both straight up and against the spread. So, as great as it is to want to back those offenses, I've reminded myself for next year to don't fall in love with those. I think the tougher teams are the ones that can prevail against the high major competition.
Yeah, I think big picture, the favorites did pretty well. I'll give you the numbers right here: 36 and 16 straight up. But again, the underdogs 28 and 24 against the number. That's about 54%. So if you just blindly bet every underdog the first 52 games, of course, that includes the first four last Tuesday and Wednesday, then you're ahead. Not by much, but you are ahead. And I think it's interesting to note, I don't want to put apples to oranges too much here, but 12 underdogs covered but didn't win. And that's about 23% of the games, which is kind of on par with what we see in the NFL. In the NFL, the baseline is 8 out of 10 favorites that win the game also cover the spread. So we're seeing that correlation in the first two rounds of March Madness, where if you're a favorite, and there's some big favorites this week, if you win the game, about 8 out of 10 times you're covering the spread. So that's something to keep in mind when we dive in. Here's what we will be diving into today. All four regions, obviously. We have 16 teams left. We have 8 games in the Sweet 16. That's pretty easy math, right? We're also going to redraft our Final Four. At the end of the show, we've seen the first two rounds. We've seen how some of these teams perform. I'll give the guys a chance to make some amends to their Final Four predictions from last week's show. We're also going to go through some of the teams that we thought maybe were underseeded, overseeded, some of our predictions from last week, big picture, and kind of see how things stack up after what now has been about 52 out of these 67 games. So we've got most of the games behind us, just the nitty gritty left. So let's start out, guys, and we start out in the West, and a very fascinating game in the West. The 1 seed Gonzaga taking on Arkansas. We saw Gonzaga open as an 8.5-point favorite. It's kind of hovering in that range now. I do think I see a 9 out there. Is there a 9? Yeah, actually, there's a 9.5 out there at DraftKings right now. So we have seen considerable movement towards Gonzaga after opening as a considerable favorite. Servo, I'll start with you. You've got Gonzaga on the sheet. Is there a reason why you think the Bulldogs are going to cover this big number?
Yeah, I got them at 8.5. There's a couple red flags for me with Arkansas here. One is that they just don't have as much front court depth as, we saw Memphis challenge Gonzaga and be physical with Holmgren in that first half, especially. Timmy kind of took advantage in the second half and got going, but they had multiple guys, Memphis did, to just send at and match up with these guys to actually keep it close throughout. Arkansas doesn't have that outside of Jalen Williams. I think that's just a big deal for me in this matchup. If Williams gets into foul trouble at all, they just don't have the size or the depth in general, just proven depth to send multiple guys and guard both Timmy and Holmgren in this matchup. So I just look at that advantage for Gonzaga in the front court and that size on both ends of the floor being a real problem for Arkansas here. And also just, Arkansas barely getting by Vermont and New Mexico State. They had some bigger leads, I guess, at times, but I just, I could see they almost lost either one of those games, especially against Vermont. And also just the third thing with this is just I'm forcing myself to rethink the SEC now because Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn all losing already. Arkansas being the only team remaining from the conference. And it's just notable that Arkansas also didn't play any a tougher non-conference schedule compared. This is going to be the best team that they're going to face all year if we reconsider the SEC here. So, I have Gonzaga winning easily. I think there's a reason that number's moving up. People are just going to keep betting on Gonzaga. I think it could be a double-digit win easy here.
Yeah, I haven't locked in anything yet. I think the point you're making about Gonzaga's big dominance has me starting to look more and more at the over. I think Gonzaga can score like crazy inside. Williams doesn't grade out that great as a post defender. I think it's 44th percentile per synergy. And he's only one man. Like he can't guard both those guys, like you said. But then on the other hand, I think Gonzaga's biggest weakness as a roster is perimeter defenders and keeping guys in front, both on the wing and at the point guard spot. I just don't think they're very quick. They don't have a lot of like those big, strong 3-and-D type of athletes that they can keep guys in front. Their freshman guards off the bench are pretty shaky in that department. So I think Note can get into the rim quite a bit, get into the paint. And then like Stevo Davis, maybe even Umude. I think they have a route to points as well. So the spread, I'm probably going to wait for it to tick up and maybe take Arkansas. But I think what I like more is the over. Both teams are going to want to push. I think there's going to be a ton of possessions in this game. And then I think both teams have a route to efficient scoring as well. So leaning towards the over here, Jared. I haven't locked anything like Dan yet, but certainly thinking about it right here.
Yeah, no official plays for me just yet. I'll give you my mindset here and I'll bounce some things off you guys. By the way, overs 28 and 24 in the tournament so far. So even though, the pace slows down, things tighten up defensively, there has been more overs than unders, take that for whatever, you want. In this game particularly, when I watched Arkansas play 0-2 against the spread, 2-0 straight up, one of those teams that have been very, able to get through, but not really that impressively. Where's JD Note? Like, what to me, that's the only chance Gonzaga or Arkansas has to win this game. JD Note figures it out. He's 2 for 10 from 3, 8 for 24 from the field in the tournament. He still scored 18 and 17 points. That's because he's getting to the line a lot, but he's getting to the line against New Mexico and Vermont. Is he going to be able to get to the line against Gonzaga? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think he's going to get those same calls against Gonzaga. Maybe he will. But when I look back at Note's season, and I look back and I correlated it to Arkansas' success, Arkansas' two biggest wins were over Kentucky and Auburn. He had 30 and 28 in those two games. That's the kind of game he's going to have if Arkansas has a chance to win this game. So if you want to balance your action a little bit, Jim likes the over, Servo likes Zaga. How about you play Zaga and then you play Note's points to the over? Probably not going to lose both. Could win both because it could be a high-scoring game. But if Note goes over, Gonzaga probably doesn't cover, and vice versa. So that's a correlated bet that you can make. Maybe got a chance to win both. I don't think the odds are high that you lose both of those bets. Servo, what do you think? To me, Note, the guy for Arkansas that has to cook if Gonzaga has, upset, alert.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons like that last game against New Mexico State that Arkansas barely got by was if Note gets into, last game he got into foul trouble, but if he also struggles from shooting wise, Arkansas struggles offensively just to find another scorer that can kind of complement Note. And that's why I think like in this matchup, if Jalen Williams is just having trouble or in foul trouble against, trying to match up with Holmgren or Timmy, I could see like if Note is the only guy that's trying to get it done for Arkansas offensively, I just feel like that's an issue. But like Jim was saying, Gonzaga's wings and perimeter defense is not as good as like a top tier team. So I think there's a path for Arkansas to just match them. I was looking at the over as well. I might end up taking that too because I do think it's going to be a back
Yeah.
and forth offensive game here.
Yeah, you look at some of the perimeter production for the guys that Gonzaga has played against. I mean, back into the WCC tournament, Khalil Shabazz and Julian Rishwain combined for 47 in the semis. Logan Johnson and Tommy Kuzi combined for 36 in the finals.
Yeah.
Memphis and Georgia State are not as heavy on the backcourt scoring, but Corey Allen still had a nice day. Tyler Harris had 13 in 23 minutes off the bench for Memphis. I think that's where they struggle. They can't keep those guys in front, and they have a great shot blocker at the rim. Holmgren erases some of those mistakes, but that was how Alabama beat them. That was how Duke beat them, just off the bounce, beating those guys off the bounce. I think that's going to be the big concern for them and something they're going to have to rein in against the Razorbacks.
Yeah, and if Note gets to the line, ball fake, dribble drive, get into the paint, 2 free throws. I mean, if that's a repeatable thing for this Arkansas offense, a lot of stoppages, a lot of free throws, good for the over. All right, so official plays, Servo's taking Gonzaga 8.5. Both Jim and I would say I'm leaning to the over after talking myself through that handicap because of the fact that Note is so good at getting to the line. And I think that's going to be a big factor in this game with, Arkansas getting into the paint and trying to take advantage of that perimeter defense for Gonzaga. So no official plays for Jim and I, but I would say we're all kind of leaning to the over. All right, let's move on to the bottom half of this bracket. And I'll be honest, this to me was the easiest pick of the week. Texas Tech and Duke, it's obviously the 2-3 game. Texas Tech is the lower seed. They are favored, line moving in their direction, Duke getting more of the handle. I mean, what other red flags do I have to throw at you to try to tell you not to bet Duke this week? Servo, all 3 of us are on Texas Tech. We're all playing it basically the same way, money line -1. I don't really think it matters. Tell me why Coach K's reign ends this week.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you guys are both on the same page as me here. So the first thing that I look at with Duke is that their defense has struggled. I mean, the Michigan State was lighting it up against them last game, and it almost cost them, the win there. They were down 5 with like 5 minutes left. They were trailing with 2 or 3 minutes left before they went on a late run to stretch that lead out. But the big thing also for them is AJ Griffin, ankle injury last game suffered, but I think if he's out, that's a really big deal. They're going to struggle to find enough offense, enough athleticism. The biggest thing, and I'm sure you guys agree though, is Texas Tech's elite defense just going to be causing a ton of problems here against just the inexperience and the lack of true ball handlers. I think for Duke, they got a lot of NBA talent, but Banchero can turn it over, AJ Griffin as well, but like Jeremy Roach is kind of the only true point guard ball handler that they have. But if he's not being one of the best players on the floor, then I could just see this lead stretching out for Texas Tech, and their defense is good enough to kind of keep leads late, unlike Michigan State did in that last game. The other thing with Duke is that they just haven't played many grinded out, lower scoring games this year. In the ACC, just not a ton of defense being played, but they have struggled in a couple of those. They lost to Ohio State and Virginia earlier this year when it was like a lower scoring game. So it's just not their style. They prefer to play in those higher scoring games like they just did against Michigan State. But Texas Tech their defense is gonna force a ton of turnovers here. I think it's just gonna be a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, since the start of March, Duke's played 7 games. If you filter Bart Torvik for those 7 games since the start of March, or go by the date filter, Duke's defense is 191st. Like that's terrible. They've gotten roasted by some bad offenses, and Syracuse put up a ton of points without Buddy Boeheim. So I think it's even worse than the context is telling you there.
Yeah,
it's a nightmare. So Texas Tech's offense is not very good either. So it's kind of like the movable object against the stoppable force. But I think like you're saying, Dan, the overriding top performing side of the ball is Texas Tech's defense. My favorite stat, I cite this on basically every show I go on, is they've played 24 unique opponents this year. 17 of them have had their season low in points.
Wow.
Like no one scores in the paint against them. They take away driving gaps. You can't post up. You have to score over the top. You have to manufacture tough jumpers. And Duke has some of that ability, but if Griffin is struggling with the ankle, he's by far their best shooter. If that's an issue for him, and then if Banchero or Keels or Roach are cold, then man, I don't really know where Duke gets the offense from, and that's their strength. So if they're not scoring, that takes away what they're good at, and I think Texas Tech can manufacture enough points against a bad Blue Devil defense. So yeah, I'm with you guys. Texas Tech -1 money line, whatever it may be.
Yeah, 2 units for me on this one, guys. It'll be in the column that I drop on Pickswise.com either tomorrow or late tonight. I don't know. It'll be up before Thursday. I know that. I'll give you my notes here, and then we'll do some final thoughts on this region and wrap things up. But so Duke did finally cover against Michigan State, even though they were 98%. Michigan State was 98% probability to cover up 5 with 5 minutes left, and they still couldn't cover the 6.5. But last 6 games for Duke, allowing 78 points. I mean, you're not going to win a lot of tournament games if you're giving up almost 80. And here's the note that really stood out to me, and this speaks to what you were talking about, Servo. So Duke hasn't faced a top 10 adjusted defense since Gonzaga in November. Here's the adjusted defense of their last 6 opponents. Michigan State 70th, Fullerton 166th. Virginia Tech was 54th, playing their 4th game in 4 nights. Miami 123rd, Syracuse 207th, and then UNC 44th, which I think when you look at UNC top to bottom, no one would consider them a defensive team. They haven't any time recently since November faced a defense even remotely to the standard of Texas Tech, not even in the same zip code. To me, that is a massive step up in approach, scheme, talent. And I just think that's going to be too much for them to overcome. Now, Tech's offense, very high variance. The Montana State game, 97 points, 12 threes. Notre Dame, 59 points, 4 threes. Do we think it's somewhere in the middle? I think that probably gets it done somewhere around 75 points and let's say 7 or 8 threes. That probably gets them home, right? I don't think Duke gets to 70 here, right, Jim?
Yeah, if Tech hits 70, I think they win. I think that's a pretty solid benchmark. I think that's kind of what the spread and the total are telling you. But yeah, I'm with you there.
You ready for the cherry on top too before we move on? In Coach K games on the West Coast, Duke is 0-5, losing by an average of 8 points. This game is in San Francisco. I think it's going to be a pro Texas Tech crowd here. I would think there's not a lot of Duke fans in the Bay Area. I know they travel relatively well, but all the neutral fans will definitely be fading Duke. I mean, that to me, that's obvious.
No, there's a lot of fans that are Duke fans, Warriors fans, Dallas Cowboys fans. You know,
I will say I saw Duke and Gonzaga here in Vegas, and man, the Duke fans traveled well.
Really? All right. So maybe not quite as much of a Texas Tech pro crowd, but I can't imagine it being a full Duke crowd. Like, it's not going to be a Duke home game. There's no way.
Gonzaga will have half the stadium, and those people will cheer for Texas Tech. No question.
100%.
Yep.
100%. If you are on the fence attending this game, you are rooting for. You want to be in attendance when Coach K has his last game, which means you want Duke to lose.
Yeah.
That ticket's worth something. Maybe it's an NFT these days, but that ticket is worth something. So we're all in agreement Texas Tech gets the win. All right, so let's quickly, before we move on to the next region, let's flash forward. I don't know if you guys ever saw that show on ABC, Flash Forward. It was like 5-10 years ago. Gonzaga, Texas Tech in the Elite Eight. I say Gonzaga's laying 5-ish, 4-ish. Jim, any early line thoughts on that and any early matchup thoughts with that game?
I mean, Gonzaga laid 9.5 on a neutral against Texas Tech back in December.
So it's going to be higher than that. Wow.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be. Excuse me, they laid 10.5. It's over 10. Whew.
Wow.
I actually bet on Gonzaga in that game, and they ended up winning by 14. But
because they laid 8.5 against Duke. You're right.
And that was another one where Gonzaga, I think, only had 16 paint points. Like Texas Tech just took that away from them, turned it into a grinder of a game. But they weren't. Texas Tech wasn't able to punish the guard defense of Gonzaga the same way that others have been. I think Holmgren had a bunch of blocks in that game, took away the rim completely. So I would still probably lean Gonzaga there. I think Gonzaga, I mentioned the fans cheering for Duke. I think the coaching staff and the players should be cheering for Texas Tech as well, because it's just a better matchup for them. They can shoot over the top if they need to. And the offense, Duke just has a far more explosive offense capable of punishing Gonzaga's perimeter defender. So I think that's a better matchup, and I would be on Gonzaga there.
Servo, any thoughts on that matchup before we move on to the next region?
Well, listen, I had Texas Tech going to the Final Four for a reason, because I thought they would actually be ready for this matchup against Gonzaga. Having the benefit of facing them already is huge. I think the fact that, whether it's Duke or Texas Tech facing them a second time, they know how to deal with Holmgren's size on the defensive end, and they know how to deal, just to frustrate them defensively on the other end. Texas Tech is a smaller front court, and kind of the opposite of what I was saying about Arkansas going against Gonzaga. I feel like Texas Tech, they just have multiple guys that they play bigger than what their size is, and that their defensive intensity down in the paint, especially grabbing boards or just frustrating shots. I think they're going to be a lot more physical. They know how to be physical with Timmy and Holmgren, so I feel like they could actually pull that off. I'd be interested to see what the spread is. I'd probably take them against the spread and maybe even sprinkle money line. We'll see.
Yeah, that'll be a fascinating matchup. So if we do flash forward to the Elite Eight and we do get Gonzaga, Texas Tech, Jim's right. Probably going to be a double-digit spread there, and I think that'll be a very fascinating game to break down. We'll have to worry about that one when we get there, but always keep those matchups in the front of your mind, because when you're handicapping the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight should be at least part of that discussion, because, again, money line rollovers, futures, all of those things factor into the equation. All right, let's move on to the East region. The region where there is no more one seed. The only region where there is no more one seed. It is UNC taking care of Baylor in that 1-8 matchup. They get UCLA in what I thought was going to be a play on the Bruins for me, laying 2.5. But, man, the injuries to Jaquez, to, just the overall Bruins vibe heading out of their first two games, in my opinion, was poor. Even though they blew out St. Mary's, I feel like the injury looms over Jaquez a little bit. Dan, you do have a play on this game, though, and it's neither side.
Yeah, it was tough for me to go either side with this, especially with Jaquez's injury right now and trying to deal with that. But I like the over here. It's just something I've been doing with both UNC and UCLA lately. And it's kind of been working most of the time. UNC 5-2 to the over in their last 7, and they're 12-5 to the over since Dawson Garcia has been away from this team. He was one of their better rim protectors, just a defender inside, and instead they've got Brady Manick playing basically the whole game at the 4 there. Just not a good defender. Manick is, and Baycott not great either outside of just shot blocking. So I think, going against UCLA here, they've been going with Cody Riley more at the 5 instead of Miles Johnson, which is an offensive game plan there because of Juzang not being 100%, not being the same scorer he usually is. And now with Jaquez, I feel like they're going to need Riley to be more offensive focused here, which takes Miles Johnson off the floor more. And I think that's a problem when you have Armando Bacon on the other side here for North Carolina. I just see this game being kind of more offensive minded than you would normally think with, like, especially UCLA games. But UNC's just been bringing that offense. And if they start out hot like they did against Baylor, I mean, UCLA is going to have to match that to try to pull this out. So, yeah, I like the over here.
Yeah, I buy that too. North Carolina's offense has been remarkable. I mentioned since March 1st, Duke's defense is 191st. Do you guys care to guess where North Carolina ranks overall since March 1st?
220th.
I was going to say like 250 or something.
No, just North Carolina's overall ranking since March 1st. Not their defense, just
probably pretty high. They beat Duke. Get some nice wins on their resume, right?
Number 1.
No, wow.
Number 1 in the country since March 1st?
Number 1 in the country. They blew out Marquette. They took care of business against Duke. And that includes the collapse against Baylor. Like, if you factor in the first 30 minutes when they had Brady Manick before he got booted, they'd be even more to number 1. Yeah. I'm not really factoring that part of the game as much into it because North Carolina plays 5.5
game
players.
Totally changed after that. You can't even literally look at the Baylor game, with any real sense of handicapping after that happened.
Yep. I think it's far more about them building the lead than it was about them blowing it. I'm very impressed by the trajectory. I thought the line would be closer to the KenPom projection of 4. And so seeing it at 2.5 was maybe pushing me not to take the heels. I'd love to get to 3 and have the full possession. But I'm leaning towards Carolina, especially Jaquez is banged up. He did not practice today, per reports out of LA. I saw them play live when he was dealing with 2 injured ankles in Tucson, and he was like nowhere near his normal caliber. Like he was just he played 35 or so minutes in that game, but it was just not the same player. So if he's banged up, that tilts me even a little more towards UNC. But I'm going to wait for now because I've seen it go on to 2.5. If I can get 3, I'll jump on it.
I think here's my strategy for this game. I don't have an official play. Neither does Jim. Servo's on the over. Here's my strategy for this game. This game's Thursday night, correct? Is it Thursday or Friday?
I think it's Friday.
Even better. We get an extra day. And that's good because sometimes the books will adjust lines based off what happens in Thursday's games, depending on public splits. I think we wait till Friday. I think we wait till they announce that Jaquez is going to play, which I think he will play. And then I think the line probably moves to 3. And then we bet UNC at 3. That seems like a very reasonable strategy because when I look at, first of all, my initial contrarian mind said 188 points, 24 made threes, plus 24 rebound margin for the Tar Heels in their first 2 tourney games. Fade, contrarian, fade. They can't keep that up. But when I think about UNC's makeup, I don't see them being able to get up and down if they are a little bit slower than UNC. And I don't care where the public's going here. And the more I talk out this game and the more I think about the injuries and just the physicality of this game, the more I like the Tar Heels. Also, the West Coast has been awful. The Pac-12 has been bad. The West Coast Conference has pretty much been eradicated, minus Gonzaga. I just think the West Coast, unlike last year, which was underrated, maybe this year a little bit overrated. So I wanted to get to the window on UCLA because they have the metrics. They've got the top 20 offense, defense. They've got the experience. They've got all the pedigree. But the physicality of the sport, to me, really goes against them in this matchup. So I think we wait and we get UNC at a better price a little later this week. So stay tuned on that one. But officially for me, no play. Servo's on the over. And I think Jim is going to hunker down with me too and try to get a better number on the Heels. All right, let's move on to the game of the week. The upset-minded St. Peter's Peacocks, Cinderella, Jersey City represent, baby. I need to get a peacock for my little swag. Some kind of peacock swag. Listen, there's not a lot of college sports going on here in this New York City area. There's not a lot of success stories with college basketball. Very rarely do we get a team into the Sweet 16. We got one with Shaheen Holloway's Peacocks. Now I got to go up. Literally, I have this in my notes. This is literally David versus Goliath. Zach, 7'4" against the little guys of St. Peter's. I think they've got a 5'11" guy on their roster. But for the most part, this is an undersized, undermanned, underappreciated St. Peter's team catching 12.5 points. Oh, by the way, double-digit favorites, 13-1 straight up, but only 7-7 against the number so far in the tournament. I see a lot of leans and a lot of action on this sheet here. Servo, I'll start with you because you're actually playing this 2 ways.
Yeah, well, I like St. Peter's in the first half, +7 there, and then full game +12.5 against the spread. So I think you guys would agree. The big thing with this game, and we'll probably know within the first 5 minutes, is how this game's going to be officiated. If they're giving Zach Edey and Trevion Williams, for that matter, just all the foul calls, and they're just calling it, and St. Peter's gets into foul trouble, it could be a long night, and I might hedge the bet depending on how the game starts. But if they let St. Peter's, their smaller front court and their tenacious defense, top 30 in the country now in all defensive efficiency, if they let them play similar to what they just did against Murray State, KJ Williams down low, where they aren't calling a lot of fouls, and St. Peter's not really fouling a ton, but just playing physical with their undersized guys, then they have a chance to keep this close and possibly, pull it off again. Who knows? I mean, listen, so there's also a general principle here for me right now. Kentucky and Murray State, I might pick to bet and maybe even on the money line against Purdue on a neutral court, especially Kentucky. And I just watched St. Peter's beat both those teams. So it's just like a general principle, like, all right, now they're playing Purdue. Also, by the way, you guys know Purdue's defense just I think it's going to do them in at some point. So I thought maybe it would happen against Texas in that last game, but Texas just didn't have the offense, which, by the way, St. Peter's doesn't have the offense either. But I just think in general, and then I just got a couple quick notes here. So on the ref thing, it came out today. We got Bo Borowski and Courtney Green.
We know the refs for this week?
Well, they were announced for Philadelphia. I don't know if they're going to be doing the St. Peter's game, but Bo Borowski specifically has done a ton of Purdue games this year. He's a Big Ten ref. I think that's huge for St. Peter's. Yeah. If he's not going to call a ton of fouls on Zach Edey, knowing that Zach Edey is just a mammoth down low and he doesn't want the other team to get into foul trouble, knowing that they're probably fouling him every play anyway. I think it's a huge deal. And if we get Bo Borowski on this game, Courtney Green too, a good ref, one of the better rated refs on KenPom also. But I think it's a huge deal. Also, the factor of St. Peter's is playing in Philly. I think it's huge for them.
That's huge. That cannot be understated, right, Jim?
Oh,
I think you muted your mic there, bud.
Sorry, yeah, I had to clear my throat for a second. But yeah,
He's so excited about St. Peter's. He had to make sure he was throwing clear.
No, I think it should be helpful. They should have a fairly pro Peters crowd there.
Yeah.
My concern is exactly the key factor that Dan mentioned is free throws. And St. Peter's is 348th in the country in defensive free throw rate. Like, it wouldn't be out of their ordinary to give Purdue 40 free throws. Like, we saw it happen last round against Texas. And I know there was a big outcry about that and the free throw disparity there, but like, that's Purdue's game. They are top 20 in the country in offensive free throw rate, so getting to the line, and defensive free throw rate, preventing others. Like, that's what they do all season long. Now they're playing a team in St. Peter's that is, like you said, smaller in the front court, 6'8", 6'7", 6'6". That's the post they're going to try to guard Edey with. I don't know how they defend him without either double teaming or just hanging on his arms. And so I can see Purdue shooting 40 free throws again here. I'm nervous about the first half because I think Peters is going to come out pretty juiced. The foul trouble won't wear them down quite as badly, but this feels like kind of a overtime. Purdue is going to wear them down and extend the lead. The one other thing I'll mention though, Jared, is that the 2 seeds that have made the Sweet 16 in the past have both covered. Florida Gulf Coast lost by 12 as a 14.5 point dog. Oral Roberts lost by 2 last year, nearly beat Arkansas outright. So it's not like those teams ran out of juice when the opponent had more time to scout them. And, it wasn't just one magical weekend. So maybe that helps Peters compete here, but the matchup it really terrifies me for St. Peter's.
Yeah, officially no play for me. I think if I had to pick between the first half of the full game, I think the first half makes more sense because you would think maybe Purdue grows into their strategy. And I'll give you some notes here on David versus Goliath. I love that metaphor for this game because it literally is David versus Goliath. Peters is 22-9 against the number this year. I mean, again, impressive stuff. 10-3 against the number as an underdog. So they're okay with being this disrespected, disregarded team. And I thought the most impressive thing about their win over Murray State, who's 11th in the country in rebound percentage, they out-rebounded Murray State in that game. That is not something I would have expected with the athletes Murray State has on their team. Now, I think Purdue has better athletes than Murray State, Jaden Ivey being, example A, and I would put Williams and Edey in kind of their own separate, ogre category of athletes in terms of just how big and brute they can be. And this number is almost hard to believe. Purdue has attempted 79 free throws in 2 tourney games. That is insane. That is ridiculous. Edey has 22 free throw attempts in his 2 games. Listen, I know that's their game, but man, oh man, I can't see St. Peter's pulling this one off. I just can't see it. But again, David versus Goliath, it's happened before. And as Jim just said, the Sweet 16 has been a breeding ground for 15 seeds of late, and those 15 seeds have covered, even though they've clearly been overmatched. But officially no play for me. Jim, no play, and Servo's gonna ride the Peacocks one more time.
Love it.
Listen, yeah, like I said, the officiating is huge because if the
Huge.
free throw
Absolutely.
numbers you just said are very indicative of like, all right, if they don't get take away half those free throws, maybe Purdue loses against Texas.
100%.
Yeah,
Purdue got to the line 46 times to 12. If that's 36, they probably lose the game.
yeah.
And 36 free throw attempts is still a lot of free throw attempts in one game. And it didn't even come close to filling out the number of where they came. So I feel like this game isn't going to be officiated in the way that Texas Purdue game was. I feel like it's going to be a little more loosey-goosey. But again, we'll see. Great note on the officials. That is important to know before we head into this tournament. All right. A quick aside here. We picked this last week during this section. Which conference do you think the winner comes from? I picked the Big 12. Jim picked the West Coast Conference. Dan, the SEC. I think, Dan, you're the only one that probably would like to amend that now, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I had Kentucky and Tennessee both in the Final Four, so yeah, I'll amend it.
What would you change it to now if you had to pick a conference right now? Big 12?
Well, I'm just going through the numbers. I mean, yeah, probably Big 12 because I think Texas Tech and Kansas could both get to the Final Four. Yeah.
Jim, you sticking with the West Coast?
Might as well. I think surviving Memphis was key for Gonzaga, and we'll see where they cruise from now. But yeah, I'll stick with it.
Pat on the back to us because I watched last week's show, and all of us were very much intrigued and excited for that Gonzaga-Memphis potential matchup. The flash forward sometimes could be a more effective handicap because we all huddled around the campfire and told all these great stories about Gonzaga making these awesome runs. But then we're like, oh, wait, Memphis might be there in the round of 32. That's a tough matchup. So let's do that here. Let's take Purdue. Let's advance them. And let's put UNC in that game against Purdue. Jim, how do the Tar Heels match up against the Boilers?
The lack of depth is a problem. So we just talked about Purdue's free throw shooting and how many times they get to the line. If Brady Manick and Armando Bacot are in foul trouble, that is a mega different team. But on the other hand, I think UNC could score 90 against that defense. That is a terrible Purdue defense. North Carolina plays up tempo. They can shoot. They can get into the paint. They can get on the offensive glass. Like, I don't really see how Purdue stops them. I think it's probably a high scoring game.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly what the number would be. Maybe, 3.5, something like that.
I'd say 4. Purdue lane 4 probably.
Yeah, I would probably gravitate towards Carolina in that one.
Yeah, you think Purdue be laying a higher number than UCLA would be against UNC, right? Right, Dan?
Yeah, well, also probably like a 160 total there, or higher. I mean,
Wow.
I agree. The Purdue defense, like I said, is gonna cost them at some point. Whether I don't think it's gonna happen against St. Peter's, even though I'm taking St. Peter's to cover. I think Purdue does survive that, obviously, but North Carolina is the ideal matchup where it could do them in. UCLA, is a lot easier for Purdue, I think, than North Carolina would be. So, I would probably take North Carolina against the spread there if that matchup happens.
I think I might too if I'm getting 4.
Yeah.
Also, another thing to keep in mind: UNC, UCLA in Philly, probably pro UNC crowd there. Same thing, UNC Purdue in Philly, probably pro UNC crowd there. I would say UNC maybe a sleeper Final Four pick right now, which we'll get to a little later in the show. But let's move on to the South. And I think I don't want to say this is going to be the conference or the region of champions, but I think this is the region of intrigue, if I want to steal a phrase from John Rothstein. I think the wrong team is favored in this Houston-Arizona game, guys. Houston's catching 2. I'm on the money line. I'll explain that why in a bit, but I want one of you, maybe Jim, start with you since you leaning Zona and you have Zona in your bracket, to tell me why I'm wrong that Houston should be favored in this game.
So I'm of two minds here. Arizona just played, I don't want to say junior Houston, but a similar team to Houston. TCU battered them on the offensive glass, got 20 offensive boards. They had career highs from 2 different guys. TCU did. O'Bannon and Lampkin both had career highs. I'm concerned about the offensive glass here. I think Houston can beat them up there. But there's also maybe a perspective of, okay, Arizona just saw that. They are going to be ready to make the adjustments. They're going to spend 4 days looking at the tape and saying, all right, we need to box out. Like, this clearly almost got us eliminated. So maybe that helps them that they just saw a similar version. And the one thing I do like for Arizona from a matchup sense is Houston just destroyed Illinois in the pick and roll. They put Kofi in pick and roll. He drops into the lane. Jamal Shed hit a bunch of pull-up jumpers,
Yeah.
or got into gaps and kicked out for threes. Arizona is going to be a better pick and roll defense. Koloko can move. He can switch on the perimeter if they want to put him on the Shed and deal with it that way. I don't think they're going to play drop coverage the same way Illinois did. So I don't think they'll get exposed in that sense. But Arizona also has to score. That could be tricky against this interior defense that Houston has. I like the talent edge that Arizona has because of Sasser being out, Mark being out. That has knocked their talent level just down a little bit. But Houston's so well coached, so disciplined, so set in their style. This one's tough for me, but slight lean to Arizona still.
Servo, Houston's the better team here.
Yeah, I'm going with Houston. And I've flipped on this, when the bracket first came out, just thinking that Houston deserved a 5 seed, but just the eye test, that handling UAB, handling Arizona. Honestly, watching that Arizona game, I know Arizona's not as strong as they could be or they should be, or Illinois rather in that game. I just, without a doubt, just saw Houston winning that game, even though it got close at times. They were in charge the entire time. And it was like the defense, but also like Jim was saying, the rebounding is going to be a deal here, a deal breaker for me for even thinking about Arizona. The big thing with the Arizona is that bothers me with thinking that they might lose one of these games coming up is Kirk Carissa is just not the same offensive scorer, shooter. He's been shooting it poorly these first 2 games, kind of rushing back from this ankle injury, bad ankle injury. And last game against TCU, they probably don't win unless Christian Koloko has one of his career games. He had like 28 points and just kind of dominated early in that game to stretch a lead out. But he was kind of late in the game. He let Eddie Lampkin just take him over on the glass and interior scoring wise. And that was a problem. And I think Houston has the front court depth and size at multiple spots to send guys and kind of eliminate Koloko's dominance there early in the game and then late in the game too. But Tubelis is going to be kind of undersized and outmatched here, I think, against Houston's physicality on both ends. So yeah, I think Houston. I'm glad I got them at 2, and I think it's gone down a little bit, but I'll take them on the money line as well.
Yeah, I've got 2 units on Houston money line plus 110. I think that's enough, but if you want to take 1.5 points and be safe, I don't mind that strategy either. But this is one of my 2 best bets for the week. Texas Tech being the other, Houston being the second. Public's loving Zona here, and I think something that stood out to me this week when I was analyzing the odds and the line movement, Arizona's odds to make the Final Four got worse this week at MGM. Plus 120 to plus 125. And I don't think that's weakness in Arizona. I think that's strength in Houston. And I think, to me, that is a very telling nugget that Arizona's, they have to win 2 less games than they did last week to make the Final Four, but their odds to make it got worse. That's rare. That's very rare with a 1 seed to see that happen, barring an injury of some kind. Crease's injury is, I have no idea what's going on in this guy's head. Jim, I know we talked about it last week that he probably is coming back too soon. I think it's obvious that he came back too soon. 1 of 10 from 3. Like, what was the scene in that movie with Ben Stiller with Philip Seymour Hoffman just jacked
Rainmaker?
Yeah, like that's what it was in that game against TCU. He played 27 minutes and he scored 3 points.
That's my issue. Why did he play 27 minutes?
I don't know.
But the player can rush back. The coach doesn't need to. I harped on this on Twitter during the game. The TCU, like, Arizona got up 9 playing 2 bigs. They played Ballo and Koloko together. They could handle the glass that way. Then they went smaller with Crease on the floor, and TCU went on a huge run, retook the lead. I hope that Lloyd will look at that and see the problems there. Maybe Crease will be healthier, but I think playing 2 bigs against Houston is like mandatory. They cannot go with that small lineup or they're going to get owned on the glass.
I mean, Tommy Lloyd's a
Yeah.
great coach. So is Kelvin Sampson. We've seen Kelvin Sampson shirtless now. I don't know if that changes your perception on him at all after that celebration in the locker room. Here's my final point on this game, and here's the cherry on top. This game is being played in San Antonio, a stone's throw from Houston. You know where the crowd's going to be here. It's going to be pro Houston. So that's, by the way, unlucky for Arizona being the 1 seed in their region and having to go to San Antonio to face Houston. That's just the way the Sweet 16 cookie crumbles, I guess. All right, let's move on. Michigan, Villanova. No play for me here. No play for Jim officially. Oh, wait, no. Jim is playing the total, and Dan is wow. We have a consensus here on the show with the total. Servo, I'll start with you. Why are we going to see points between the Wildcats and the Wolverines? A W nickname battle here.
Yeah, right. I could see this going either way. As much as I think Villanova should win, Michigan has been surprising me left and right these first 2 games. I thought they'd lose against Colorado State, so I'm going with the over here on the total. Michigan 19th offensive efficiency in the country. Villanova 8th best nationally, and Michigan just been coming in hot with their offense. Hunter Dickinson I think is going to have a huge advantage against Villanova's front court in this matchup. They just don't have defensively. They don't have guys that can match up with Dickinson or the depth for that matter. If Eric Dixon gets in foul trouble, their starting center. So I could see Hunter Dickinson just having another big game here. And then the other side, Villanova, even though they play at a slow pace, they're just very methodical, getting every single shot that they want and usually making them, but a ton of threes as well. So I just see this being kind of one of those back and forth efforts. And both teams have been trending to the over in general, especially Michigan with their defense being a little suspect. So I just like the over here in general.
Yeah, this is all about efficiency in the matchup for the over here. Usually I like to have a big tempo factor when I'm betting overs or unders. I want to have reason to believe it'll be slower or faster than projected. But this one, it's basically all efficiency. I think Dickinson's going to eat inside. He's going to get a ton of easy buckets. And I think Jay Wright's okay with that. I don't think he's going to double too much because I don't think he wants to give up threes. But he believes in the long term, his offense can out efficient a single post scorer. And I think that's going to be the case. They're going to move Dickinson around. They're going to make him play in space. He can't come out to the perimeter to close out against Eric Dixon. He can't play in ball screens against Gillespie and pick and pop stuff with Samuels or Slater. I think that's a problem for both teams on both ends. And so I think the efficiency is going to be high enough to see an over here, even if it is a relatively slow game.
Yeah, 21 threes in 2 games for Nova. They've scored 80 and 71. We think of Nova as this defensive-minded team. I think that perception might be wrong. I think Nova's offense is better than their defense, me personally. Watching them play their first 2 games especially, but just watching them throughout the course of the season, they tend to be their defense is still good. Let's not take anything away from that. But I think they don't take bad shots and they don't turn it over and they make good decisions. And that makes their offense very easy on the eyes because there's a lot of open shots and there's a lot of really crisp passing ball movement that goes on during their possessions. And their offense, again, is really tough to guard because it's not necessarily one explosive player doing it all like a Jaden Ivey maybe, but they've got 5 guys playing as one, and that makes it very hard to guard.
That really helps their defense too. Like 100%. taking good shots and not turning the ball over. That is a massive help to their defense.
So if anything, their offense is the reason why their defense is probably better than expected. Yes. And our perception on them is a little skewed. We view them as a really grinded out defensive team that plays at a slow pace. They are those things, but they are those things because their offense is so efficient, which again, maybe the total's a little bit wrong. I haven't gotten to the window on this, but I'm probably going to bet the over based off of our conversation here today. I'll add this before we move on. Dickinson, 48, 15, 5, and then 5 blocks in his first 2 tourney games. And oh, by the way, 3 of 6 from the 3-point line, 13 of 15 from the free throw line. True or false? He's the best player on the floor in this game, right?
No.
I'd take Gillespie.
You take Gillespie over Dickinson?
Or even Justin Moore for that matter.
I mean, it's a valid question.
Can I cop out here and say
Sure.
Dickinson's the most dominant player on the floor, but he's not the best?
Yeah. but
because
that's
there's nobody to guard him. Like I think in a vacuum, I'd take Gillespie to start a team, but because there's nobody to guard
Fair enough.
Dickinson, I think he'll be more dominant.
By the way,
accountant trying to get the numbers right before we submit our taxes.
Yeah.
By the way, we haven't talked about, and I don't think it matters as much, but Devontae Jones, the point guard from Michigan.
Unluckiest guy in the tournament. Are you kidding me?
Michigan's been perfectly fine without him. I mean, last game he returned, but he still left early with another concussion symptoms, I think. So I doubt he plays, but I don't think it matters.
I'm a little worried about Collins. I'll be honest. I think Frankie Collins is not, like, Tennessee just was a no-show in the end, second half of that game. Something tells me Frankie Collins won't have as easy of a time against this Nova defense as he did against Tennessee's defense down the stretch. But that's just a hunch. All right. Quick aside before we move on to the next region. Most outstanding player. That's on our list. I've got Remy Martin at 45-1, and I've got Tajay Moore at 50-1. Any additions or subtractions to that list, Jim?
I said Matherin pre-tournament, so I'm going to ride with that.
Okay.
The one flyer I'm kind of intrigued by is Jamal Shed, 65-1. He's going to play basically every minute for Houston. You're getting one of those guys in the Elite Eight since they're playing each other here, but I think he kind of becomes their most important player, which I don't know if that's going to line up to most outstanding, but the way he operates, he kind of controls the tempo. He's a pest of a defender. He hits some big shots. He's going to lead him in assists. So I like Shed as the dart throw of the Houston guards. I know all three of us kind of have a different view of that, but Shed's my guy there from Houston.
Yeah, I didn't have the odds on it, but Kyler Edwards, I doubt he's as much of a value as like Shed.
I saw 45-1. He's up.
That's not bad. Yeah, I mean, so the thing with Edwards that stands out to me is that he has Final Four experience with Texas Tech, which I think is big for if Houston gets to the Final Four. I just think he's gonna know what to do. The bigger stage won't be as big to him. So Shed was on last year's Houston team, and he was in the Final Four too. So I like that as well. But I think like the Houston guys definitely have value if they just been on the stage, they know what to do.
I'll probably add Edwards and Shed because listen, I think if you get 50-1 or higher, you can throw a couple of 3 or 4 darts, and you could still feel pretty good about yourself. I do
like the Remy Martin one though. I like
Remy Martin is a must play.
He's on fire. He's a difference.
He's the guy. We'll get to Kansas in a bit. He's the guy that made. I mean, Creighton was up 6 in that game. He checks in, bang. I mean, it was like lightning in a bottle. Remy Martin's a must bet, and I think the point is, I think it's important to target the team and then the player first. Don't look at the player list. Pick the team that is going to be in the championship game, and then handicap the players. Team first. Player second. Yeah. That's how you handicap the most outstanding.
So on that note, if Houston beats Arizona, I think Houston's in the title game. So
totally
that's
agree.
I
think and we said it. We said last week the winner of that Arizona Houston game is going to the Final Four. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind about that. And I think the two best teams in that region are playing each other in the same game in the Sweet 16. It's a shame it's not the Elite Eight. That's the way the seeds work out. Houston got underseeded at 5, probably should have been a 3 seed. And then we probably would have gotten that game in the Elite Eight. But that's the way, again, the Sweet 16 cookie crumbles. All right, let's move on. Midwest, final region. We'll start with Providence. They're in the Sweet 16, right? Just as everyone expected after whatever ridiculous season they've had. They're catching almost 8. I see 7.5. I saw an 8 pop up for a hot minute before it got bought down. I don't see them beating Kansas. Someone please, Jim, Dan, I know you're both on Providence here. Serv, I'll start with you. Why am I wrong for thinking this game shouldn't even be played and Kansas just advance them to the next round?
Well, listen, I think Kansas wins straight up. Okay. But I just think this is too many points for Providence being just a veteran team, starting 5 seniors. And they're, Jared Bynum doesn't even start, but he's like their best, offensive playmaker right now. It's too many points for me to not consider Providence, and I'm making an official pick 7.5, getting 7.5 points here. I just think they're going to keep it close. Even though I'm really high on Kansas, I think now, they definitely go to the Final Four out of this, easier region for them. But Providence 7-1 against the spread this year as underdogs, which is a big deal. They've just been a team that when they're getting disrespected, according to Vegas, they come out and play better. And this tournament, I've been so impressed. I know they were, myself included, they were a popular pick to lose to South Dakota State. And they just completely handled Richmond in the next game, ruined that Cinderella story. So they just been they're just playing on such a nice level right now. And they have, like I said, the experience to not back down from a Kansas team that, by the way, if Remy Martin is on this team right now, I just don't know what kind of how good they are, and if they are even still alive in the tournament. They probably lose to Creighton if Remy Martin isn't the player he is right now, because Agbaji has been just struggling offensively. So I just think that Providence is going to bring the defense and bring the experience to this matchup.
Yeah, hand up. I was one of the ones that had Providence going out to South Dakota State as well, but I learned and I bet on Providence in the second round, and I enjoyed counting my money after that. That was much better. That's the way you do it. Granted, Richmond was 1 for 22 from 3 and 8 for 21 from the free throw line.
Shot quality had them winning that game by 3, by the way.
I have decided that Providence does not count for shot quality.
They're immune to shot quality.
It's just a team that you can't measure in numbers. I had the same issue all season with them of
everyone
margin matters for how you grade out a team and how I have my rating set up. And Providence just kind of broke the system this year.
They did.
You mentioned how old they are, Dan. Somebody told me, I think this is true, their starting lineup is older than the Oklahoma City Thunders. So that's pretty impressive for a college team. They've got 24-year-olds basically up and down the roster.
It's wild.
I just don't see them getting blown out. They're too well coached. They're too tough. They're too solid at the end of games. They make some huge plays between Bynum and Durham, especially. I think Nate Watson's the best big man on the floor. Sorry, Mr. McCormick. I just think 7.5 is too high. I would also say Kansas advances, but getting a touchdown here, I'm taking the Friars and their kind of voodoo magic they've got.
See, now I want to reconsider this play, but I think it's the right move. I think we bet Kansas to make the Final Four at -150, because I think all of what you guys are saying is great, and I agree that Providence is it's voodoo. I don't know what it is. It's voodoo magic. The Friars cast some spell, that goofy Friar with his, toga sandals.
That looks like a guy that practices some weird dark arts. I don't know.
I can't explain it. Again, shot quality had them losing that game to Richmond. Shot quality had them losing a game in real life that they won by 18.
28. They won by 28.
28.
Yeah, they
28.
smashed them.
They won a game by 28 points that the analytics said they were going to lose by 3. There is no explanation to these results. They go against logic, reason, everything. Voodoo, really, the only explanation.
Shot quality had them losing to South Dakota State too. Again, they just break shot quality. They break it.
They have broken all. The analytics nerds are going to cry themselves to sleep after grading this Providence season, because they've been wrong at every step of the turn. Remy Martin, 29 minutes, the most minutes he's played since December 18th against Stephen F. Austin. That matters to me. I thought he would get 20. That's why I like Creighton. The fact that he got 30, Creighton probably was lucky to cover that game, frankly. I think Remy Martin is the difference in this Kansas team. I think that's why they're the national champs when it's all said and done, but I've been wrong before many times. So I'm betting 2 units to Kansas, to go to the Final Four, and I'm going to hope the voodoo magic. Maybe Bill Self's got some kind of witch doctor that he'll bring in before the game to voodoo this out.
We just need Providence to lose by 4 points. How about
that?
Yeah.
Where is it? I think I didn't look at I should have looked at location. Hold on, I'll get it right now. It's in Chicago. This is not going to be a pro Providence crowd. It'll be a pro Jayhawk crowd, if anything, but likely neutral. All right, final game here of the region, and final game for us to break down: Miami and Iowa State. I was in a very unique position in this game. I was able to get Miami very early on +1, and I came back on Iowa State +2.5. I'll let you guys break the game down, but for me, I'm going to sit back and just count my money and hope that we get a close game. Jim Root, tell me why Miami's the right side here.
I just love the matchup for Miami. I think this is the perfect kind of X and O setup. Iowa State's whole defensive scheme is to harass you, to gamble, to get turnovers, get steals. Their offense stinks, so they need some of those steals to boost their offense. And Miami has like maybe one of the best guard trios in the entire country with Moore, McGusty, and Wong. They're sixth nationally in turnover rate. They do not cough it up. And unlike Wisconsin, who also doesn't turn the ball over, Miami will punish you with if you're gambling. Like Wisconsin's more of a we don't turn it over because we're very conservative and slow. Miami just has really solid guards that make great decisions. I think they can get downhill when Iowa State gambles a little bit, get into gaps defensively, get to the rim. And then I don't trust the Iowa State offense against anybody. Miami's defense or whoever's defense you want to throw at them, I think they struggle to score. So matchup wise, I'm definitely digging the Hurricanes in this one. I know Dan disagrees with me though, so you're going to get both sides of the argument here, Jared.
That's why I'm middling it. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I'm in the perfect neutral zone here.
So I could just see this going either way because like at the ultimate clash of styles, like you were laying out there, Jim. Like I mean, one of the elite defenses in the country, according to KenPom, in Iowa State, and a top 20 offense for Miami. And it's basically which one do you think wins out? And it's interesting that the money is flowing towards Miami, and that now they're, I got Iowa State actually at +3.
Good number
today. Yeah.
Great.
So like, and the kind of general principle again for me here is that like I see this game being these teams being even. And if one team's getting 3, like I'll gladly take that just because I could see Iowa State being up by 3 late and then their defense is kind of holding on. I do think their offense is a definite worry to even keep it close. That's why I think I'm not surprised Miami is the favored team here and it flipped because Miami's offense has that ability to just kind of get up big there. A couple interesting trends here that I'm just seeing is that Iowa State 13-6 against the spread as underdogs this season, 5-1 against the spread as underdogs in the past month alone. And Miami has been a better team to bet on when they're underdogs, but 8-13 against the spread as favorites this year. And I just say like their game against Auburn just didn't show up, especially late in that game. They just weren't up for it to keep pace with Miami there. I just like the defense of Iowa State just showing up and keeping this one a grind throughout. So I think the 3 points, I'll gladly take that, even if they lose close late.
Yeah, let's give TJ Otzelberger some credit here, huh?
Crazy story.
Flowers.
This was a 2-wins team last year that's in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, Jared, he is the reason I have hope in my alma mater. A new coach turning around in 1 year, going to the Sweet 16. It can happen. It can happen.
I mean, you're talking to the king of the hope when it comes to college basketball is Penn State. And, I like what I've seen from Shrewsbury. But this team, this Iowa State team, shows you exactly why a good coach can turn things around so quickly. He's been to the tournament before with South Dakota State, had a couple of very mediocre years at UNLV, and then bang, gets himself a high major program. And all of a sudden, these kids are locked in defensively, and they're making big shots at the right time, and they finagle their way into the Sweet 16. They started the year 12-0. I mean, they have some pedigree to them that this year they're kind of saying. I mean, they beat Memphis, they beat Creighton, they beat Iowa. I mean, they got some really good wins on their resume this year. So
they've yet to lose to a team that's not in the Big 12. They haven't done it yet.
I don't see why they're not overly confident in this spot. Here's the part of the matchup that scares me. Jim, you mentioned it. The Canes are 6th in turnover percentage. They've got a +24 turnover margin in 2 tourney games, forcing 31, allowing just 7. And on the other side, Iowa State, that's their bugaboo. They're not great forcing turnovers or, holding on to it themselves. They've committed 24 turnovers in 2 games in the tournament. So that's the part of the matchup that scares me. And if I, gun in my head, pick a winner, Miami is the one that moves on. But that line was wrong when it opened, Miami +1. And I think it's wrong now at Iowa State +3. I think it's probably a pick 'em.
Yeah, it should be a pick 'em, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a really good chance that this game lands 1 or 2. And I'll gladly take my chances that Iowa State loses by 1 or 2 or Miami wins by 1, and I'll come out on the right side of this middle. So as much as I'd love to get involved further in this game because I love to have bets out there and I love to, play the field, I think I'm going to stand pat with my middle here. and just hope that it's a really close game. But gun to my head, I think Miami wins. All right, question in the chat about Providence first half compared to Providence spread and also on the money line. Jim, both you guys are on Providence. Would either of you consider the first half or the money line in this spot?
I like full game more just because I think the thing about Providence I love about them is that they don't die. They could get down early. They did a lot this season, but they fight back. They get back into the game. I could see them being, taking a haymaker from Kansas early and not being phased by that, even if they're down 10 early or something. So they're not a team I think jumps out early and gets ahead of teams. That they're more of a fight back, claw back, hang around in the game type of team. So I prefer the full game there.
Servo?
Yeah, I agree. I like Ed Cooley's the kind of coach to me where he's going to go in at halftime and make adjustments, and then all of a sudden you see Nate Watson getting a ton more touches in the paint and them going to him if he doesn't have a good first half, that kind of thing. Or if Remy Martin's killing them, then they put multiple guys or switch up defenders on them. So I could see it being like a full game play is what I like better than the first half.
You bet your ass Bill Self's going to watch that Creighton film from last week or 2 weeks ago. That was a blitz. All right, now's the time, ladies and gentlemen. Redraft the Final Four. I'm going to stick to my guns a little bit. I'm going to reverse course on two. So I'm going to stick with Kansas. I'm going to stick with Houston on the right side of the bracket. The left side, I'm flip-flopping Gonzaga and Texas Tech. I had Texas Tech. Now I'm going to think Gonzaga is my squad. And, man, I really struggled with this other game, or this other region. I want to say Purdue has the horses to get there, but I know Jim's bet on North Carolina. I'm kind of leaning your way after we talk this out, Jim. So sell me on UNC because for the most part, we're all kind of in agreement with a lot of these other teams, but that UNC-Purdue dichotomy is fascinating, huh?
Yeah, I just don't really trust Purdue. I think I've kind of been waiting in the weeds to spring the trap on them. Be like, this is when I'm betting against Purdue, but I haven't found the right opponent to do it yet. I don't think St. Peter's is quite the right opponent.
UNC could be.
Yep. And we talked about the UNC UCLA game at length. I'm waiting for that 3 to show up, and I'm going to hop on UNC. I just kind of buy that they're this good. The talent on the floor is good enough to be at this level. Maybe Hubert Davis figured something out coaching. It's his first year, especially defensively. They've been a lot better recently. So yeah, I'm going with Carolina in that region. Do you want my whole Final Four now, or
well, we're all pretty much in agreement, but you do have Arizona. That's your difference too. You have Arizona over Houston.
Yep, I do. That's kind of riding with my pre-tournament perception of them. I think they played a not great game, and Houston played an incredible game. And I'm not trying to get as swayed by that. I'm sticking more with the preseason assumption or pre-tournament assumptions with them. So Gonzaga, Arizona, North Carolina, Kansas for me.
Servo, take us home, bud. I think Servo and I are kind of on the same page, but go ahead, hammer.
Yeah, well, 2 of mine are out, so Kentucky and Tennessee, so that's fun.
Forced to redraft. Forced to redraft.
Yeah, so I'm happily accepting here a redraft. Kansas, Houston, Texas Tech, and Purdue is mine. Houston's the one. Yeah, the Arizona Houston game. That's gonna be so fun to watch. Yeah. The Purdue, I think it just broke right for them with the St. Peter's and then 2 lower seeds in their bracket now. I just think it's a clearer path. I don't trust their defense at all, so I think it definitely costs them at some point. Like I've said, maybe it's it's at the Final Four, whoever they face. I have Texas Tech there, but I like the Houston, Kansas too. I mean, I like that Final Four pick that you said, Jared, minus 150. That's a good price for a team that
really good price.
Yeah, like they have a good path now too.
Yeah, I won't put that in the write-up this week. So my official bets here on this show, two big ones, just for if we're going game bets, Texas Tech and Houston, both on the money line. Those are the only 2 plays for games, individual games, that I am on so far this week. 2 units on each of those, and I've got my little fun middle with Iowa State and Miami. Servo, do you want to recap the bets you're on here for the audience before we say farewell?
Yeah, I mean, I just went with official picks for all these because I just have some strong opinions on them. But Gonzaga 8.5, given 8.5. I like them to cover that. Texas Tech, you said money line. Houston, I got +2 on that one, so I like that. Over in the Michigan Villanova game, over 135.
I'm adding
Also,
I'm
yeah,
adding-
yeah, I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
Over in the North Carolina game as well, North Carolina UCLA. I think that's over 141.5. Providence plus 7.5, and then Iowa State plus 3. I think that was all of them.
I think so too.
Yeah. Oh, St. Peter's as well. That was
Oh yeah, that's right. How can we
first half and
Double
full
up.
game. Why not?
double up on the Peacocks? All right, Jimbo, give us one last rundown here, your bets before we say farewell.
I'm with you guys. Texas Tech money line, the Michigan Villanova over. I'm waiting on that UNC plus 3. I will be locking that in if it hits 3.
Yeah.
And then didn't do anything with Arizona, Houston. I was too spooked. But then in the Midwest, I like Providence plus 7.5, Miami minus 2.5. I'm on both of those.
Beautiful. Guys, this has been a blast. Are we all still sticking with our championship? I've got Kansas, Jimbo, Arizona, Servo. You get a new pick here. What go ahead. Give me your championship pick now.
My new pick is Kansas now.
Kansas.
Yeah.
Jimbo, you sticking with Zona?
Stick with it. Yep. I'll ride with the Wildcats.
Riding with the Cats. All right. This has been the Pickswise Mega March Madness Sweet 16 preview. Dan Servodidio, Jim Root. I'm Jared Smith. A lot of bets, a lot to digest. Feel free to rewind the clock and watch it back. I know I'll be watching it back a couple of times tonight just to make sure I didn't miss out on any of these great nuggets these guys were dishing. But we appreciate you tuning in. Good luck with your plays this week.